I'm very pleased that to welcome the next poet, Laura Boss. Laura Boss has been working with the children in the schools for us in Paterson and throughout New Jersey for a number of years. She's well known as a poet and a poet in residence. She's the author of On the Edge of the Hudson, the winner of the NEA's American Literary Translators Award, Stripping and Reports from the Front. She is the founder and editor of Lips magazine. Her fellowships and awards include the Poetry Society of America's Gordon Barber Memorial Award, among others, and she was just a finalist in the Alice Faye di Castagnoli, I can't say it, award from the Poetry Society of America, and there were only 10 finalists from across the country, so I think we should give Laura an extra round of applause for that. Just let me finish introducing Laura. So I'm anxious. Laura is also one of the most courageous and original poets that I know. She says things and says them with humor and honesty, and again, is a poet who can both make you laugh and cry, both laugh at yourself and sometimes at our situation as human beings. Let's welcome Laura Boss.
I'd like to dedicate this reading to the 600 students I saw this week in Paterson and those I didn't see, who keep the spirit of Ginsberg and Williams alive in Paterson. When You Are Grown, Amanda Rose. This is a poem addressed to my infant granddaughter, and it concerns the prejudice they encountered when they took a trip to Sydney, Australia. When you are grown, Amanda Rose. When you are grown, Amanda Rose, and fill out NEA forms, if there is still an NEA in the year 2024, you will check minority infant granddaughter and check the box Hispanic in that column of minorities. And at your first job interview, your dark skin will need no check mark when you are sitting at some employer's mahogany desk during this job interview. And perhaps by then, your father, my son, will have told you how on his first trip with your mother, a business trip to Australia, how your mother was not allowed to enter a restaurant in Sydney when they stood at the entrance of the gold damask draped room because of the color of her skin, and how this also happened at the next restaurant they tried and the one after that. And when my son went up to the young owner of a kosher restaurant, and the owner also did not want her to enter, my son said that he was Jewish, and how could this man discriminate after how the Nazis had treated the Jews? And the owner replied, "Please leave." And by then, my future daughter-in-law, your mother, was crying, and my son was both raging as a man and falling in love with your mother, though who was to know that such discrimination would spark the romance that would produce you, beautiful Amanda Rose? And how taxis passed them by, this young couple holding suitcases, he with his fierce green eyes, and she with her black eyes tearing and her mascara streaking and her wild dark hair forming curls around her angelic face, her almost 5-foot frame looking so tiny next to him, though he is just of average height. And finally, at the hotel, the desk clerk saying their rooms were not available because the previous occupants had decided to stay longer and to please try another hotel, and how your mother cried all through that dream trip, according to your father, whose own shouting I have always found annoying. But your father yelled and yelled at that hotel manager with threats of suits for discrimination until the manager told the bellman to take your mother and father's suitcases up to the reserved rooms, and your father first kissed your mother and decided he was going to marry her. And I also know that the sweetest, most gentle voice I ever heard my son use was in the hospital when you were born 3 months ago, Amanda Rose, and he quietly said to you, you're going to have a good life. This next poem is a poem, a recent poem. It's not even typed up yet, and I read it once, not so very long ago at all, when the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation sponsored a poetry reading with the poet laureate at Delaware Valley Regional High School. I wish I had a better handwriting. I wanted to go to Princeton. I wanted to go to Princeton, but I wasn't smart enough. And anyway, they didn't take girls in those days. I wanted to go to Princeton, but I didn't. And anyway, it was my brother's job to go to a good school, or at least get a scholarship to a decent school, even if it were not Princeton. And it was my job, if I couldn't go to Princeton, to at least marry a guy who had gone to Princeton. So when I was at a female school, Douglas, 20 minutes from Princeton, I dated Princeton guys, not Rutgers guys, whenever I could, though I had to take a less attractive-looking Princeton guy than I would have if I had been dating a Rutgers guy. And the Princeton guy traded up in looks if he took out a Douglas girl rather than a Radcliffe or Vassar girl. And I could have married one guy from Princeton. His name was Freddie, and he was serious and thin, and wrote me stacks of letters on stationery with a Princeton logo. And when his Princeton envelopes arrived, I realized I liked the letters and stationery more than I liked him. And another guy I dated from Princeton, nicknamed Gish, was president of his eating house, the only Jewish eating house. He would travel on the train sometimes to see me at Douglas, and once I stayed over at the eating club while he was president, while he, as president, sat downstairs all night, making sure no guys got upstairs. And I liked him, but I liked him apparently more than that blonde Princeton guy liked me. And so my brother did what he was supposed to do, earned his full scholarship to Rutgers, became a Henry Rutgers scholar along with his classmate Robert Pinsky, who was good in English, according to my brother. And my brother went on to Yale Law School on a scholarship like he was supposed to do, and I married the son of one of the wealthiest Jewish men in the state, something I was supposed to do, though to my disappointment, my husband had not gone to Princeton or Harvard or even Yale, but NYU Business School. But he was smart and nice looking, and it was what I was supposed to do. And after all, I had gone to Douglas, and after we were married, had to transfer to where we lived in Rutherford to FDU, and we all know no Princeton guy would have ever gone out with a girl from FDU. Though William Carlos Williams lived in that tiny town in that little town in Rutherford, though I learned what poetry really was in Rutherford, though I could finally concentrate on my courses now that I was married, after all, my job of getting married was now accomplished. And my senses bloomed, and my teacher brought my poems to William Carlos Williams, and even my mark soared. And I loved that school and its English teachers as much, and probably more, than if I had been smart enough to get into Princeton. This is the first poem from my very first book. It's so old it can't be found. I am my father's daughter. Tonight, remembering the shadow of my father's voice saying he'd make it up to me as he vomited black into a metal bowl I held for him, a fading giant. He knew, yes, he knew what lay hidden from him on afternoons, each shorter, each darker, each closer to the end. Please God, no, no, pray the atheist daughter. My father, married at 18, a shotgun wedding, divorced twice from his first wife, a true son of his parents, also divorced, remarried, divorced, and his father married again. My father, a man the lady smiled across the room to, leaned close to, and he, the gentleman, smiling back into their eyes. Don't die, Daddy, don't know you're going to die. My mother teaching, I leave school at noon. Something's wrong, my mother gives me her role, hides in the classroom by day to face the light at night, 16, and the secret wrapped up in me. My mother trusts me not to tell, my father too. I'll make it up to you, he keeps repeating, smiling the smile that made the ladies move across the room to him. One morphine day, 2 days before the end, he stopped being lucid. His words clearly etched my failure in the air. Over and over for 2 days, I'm sitting on my coffin. Too many women cried at my father's funeral. You have your father's smile. I am my father's daughter. I'm going to finish with a newer poem, Matching Urns. I think how 3 weeks ago before surgery, I thought as I cleaned my apartment in case I didn't make it, so my mother wouldn't have a stroke when she saw my place. How one of the first things my first husband's second wife did after their marriage was to get 2 places in a mausoleum, so they would be together forever. Though in the traditional Jewish religion, I'm still married to him since we never had a Jewish divorce, just the usual civil one. And I think how I don't have a place to be buried, no plot way out in Long Island by my grandparents, no plot nearer in Queens where my father and his parents and his sisters are buried with only room left for my mother. What a pain for my kids at the time of grieving to have to find some plot of dirt to dig me into. How civilized if I am cremated and saved in the time and effort, as well as the long trip out to Long Island, lights on all the cars way out to Long Island, but the air conditioner's probably off since the cars are overheating from the 10-mile-an-hour funeral procession. No, perhaps a plot closer to their apartments, but then so costly for them. Yes, better and cheaper to be burnt up, and my ashes given to them in a tasteful urn, in brown clay, or perhaps pink enamel with little rosebuds, with daisies if they want to spring for it, to be placed on a mantle. But whose mantle? Will my 2 sons fight over who will get my ashes? Will the fight be over who has to keep this depressing urn on their mantle? Neither has a mantle. And how will their wives feel to have their mother-in-law forever parked in their living room, seeing the dust or unvacuumed floors, a constant recrimination to them that she was never a housekeeper? And perhaps my lover of 10 years will want the urn. After all, he is such a collector of cardboard boxes that his VCR or an electric fan came in. Will my ashes be fought over? Will they third me up so that one might have the ashes of my legs with their slight varicose veins, or my head, or my breast? My younger son, who kept his bottle until he was 5, probably would get my breast. No, I see my lover with these. He always admired them. Now he can have their ashes. Buy me a pretty black bra from Victoria's Secret catalog and throw it in. Take out the bra when he yearns for me. No, the ashes on the bra would mess up his place, and he hates all dust with a passion. No, I see him taking my ashes to the relief of both my sons, and especially their wives. I see him putting my ashes in a matching urn that he selected so carefully for his cat, Kate. I see our twin urns on his mantle, my fate to be there next to this cat I was so allergic to in life. Seeing some new lover of his in a jealous fit after he tearfully tells her how much he loved me after making love to her. This new lover spitefully moving these 2 urns on the bedroom mantel so that he is actually talking to the cat when he remembers me, and tenderly pats her urn and calls her Laura.